She was 4 miles from nowhere when the sandal strap finally broke. Leanne Hadley, Pruitt technically, for 11 more days until the paperwork cleared, sat down on the gravel shoulder of Highway 64 and didn't get back up. Not because she couldn't, because for a moment she genuinely couldn't think of a reason to. Her purse was tipped on its side beside her. Her phone was at 4%. In her bag, underneath her wallet, and her lip balm, and the gas station receipt from last Tuesday, was an acceptance letter from Vanderbilt's nursing program that nobody in her life knew about. She'd been planning to tell Brett after she figured out how to make it work. Brett had made that conversation unnecessary. She put her face in her hands. The August heat came off the asphalt in waves. A truck passed without slowing. Then a black car stopped. Not in a hurry. Not with hazard lights. It just stopped. Like someone had made a decision. The door opened. A man got out. Dark suit. Tattoos starting at his collar and disappearing into his cuffs. He walked around the front of the car, crossed the gravel shoulder, and crouched down in front of her in the full Tennessee summer heat, like he had all the time in the world. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't offer a phone. He looked at her directly and said, "What are you going to do next?" Nobody had asked her that in 3 years. I need to tell you about Brett Pruitt before I tell you about Varro, because you can't understand the road without knowing what I was running from. My name is Leanne Hadley. Grew up in Hardin County, Tennessee, the kind of place where everybody knows your family name before they know your face. Where Sunday dinner is a command performance, and a woman's life is more or less expected to follow a particular track without much discussion about whether that track was what she wanted. I wasn't unhappy growing up. I want to be clear about that. My mama made the best buttermilk biscuits in the county. My daddy worked construction and coached my brother's baseball team and never missed a recital, even when he was running on 4 hours of sleep. We weren't rich, but we were solid, and solid felt like enough when I was 17 and didn't know yet what else there was. I met Brett Pruitt at a Friday night football game my junior year. He was a year ahead of me, already had the easy confidence of someone who'd been told his whole life he was going places. He was funny in the way that gets your attention before you've had time to decide if the funny is kind or not. We dated through his senior year and my junior and senior years. Broke up when he went to community college in Jackson. Got back together when I graduated. By 23, I was Mrs. Brett Pruitt, living in the house on Clover Ridge Road that his parents had helped them buy, working as a medical receptionist at a clinic in Savannah, Tennessee, while Brett managed the floor at his uncle's hardware store. It was a fine life. That word again. Fine. What I didn't understand until I was already inside it was that Brett's particular idea of a good life had very specific requirements. He wanted a house that looked right and a wife that looked right, and eventually children that confirmed he'd built the thing he was supposed to build. He wasn't cruel about this in the obvious ways. He didn't shout. He didn't drink. He was present, attentive even, in the way of a man who took his responsibilities seriously. What he was, underneath the responsible surface, was a man who needed his life to perform correctly. And I was a component of that performance. I found out about the infertility gradually, the way you find out about things your body has been trying to tell you for a while. Irregular cycles, 2 losses early enough that I'd barely had time to know about them before they were over. A specialist in Nashville who ran tests and sat across her desk with the careful expression of someone about to say something that couldn't be taken back. Your chances of conceiving naturally are very low, she said. Not impossible, but close. I drove home on the interstate and sat in the driveway of the house on Clover Ridge Road for 40 minutes, engine off, keys in my lap, watching the front door like it might tell me something. Then I went inside and told Brett. He didn't yell. That was almost worse. He got very still and very quiet and said he needed to think. He thought for 3 days, 3 days of him sleeping on his side of the bed with his back turned and eating dinner without saying much, and going to work and coming home and doing all the things a person does while they're building up to something. On the 4th day, he told me the marriage wasn't working. He didn't use the word infertile. He said compatibility. He said different life goals. He said he thought we'd grown in different directions, which was the most dishonest sentence I'd ever heard from a man who had never once asked what direction I wanted to grow in. I stood in the kitchen of the house on Clover Ridge Road and listened to my husband explain why I was being returned, and I felt something happen in my chest that wasn't grief exactly. It was more like a door closing on a room I'd been standing in for 3 years and realizing too late that I'd been so focused on how to arrange the furniture that I'd never looked out the window. I had 2 weeks. That was what he gave me, 2 weeks to figure out where to go. Here's the thing about leaving a marriage in a small Tennessee town. The town talks before you do. By the end of the first week, I'd had 3 phone calls from women at our church who had clearly heard something from someone and were using concern as a delivery mechanism for questions they wanted answered. My mother-in-law called once and said nothing useful. My own mother, when I finally told her, got quiet in the specific way she got when she was figuring out what the situation required of her before she let herself feel it. "You can come home," she said. "I know, Mama." "But you're not going to," she said, less a question than a read. "I'm going to figure out what comes next," I said. What came next was already figured out. I just hadn't told anyone yet. The acceptance letter from Vanderbilt's nursing program had been sitting in my email for 6 weeks, printed and folded inside the cover of the planner I kept in my purse. I'd applied 8 months ago, and in the margins of evenings, when Brett was watching television, and I was supposedly reading. I'd done it quietly because I'd learned, over 3 years, that dreams you said out loud in that house became things Brett had opinions about. The letter said I had 30 days to confirm enrollment. I had 14 days until Brett wanted me out of the house on Clover Ridge Road. The math was uncomfortable, but workable. If I had a car and some money and somewhere to land in Nashville, while I sorted out housing. On a Tuesday morning, I came out of a follow-up appointment at the specialist's office in Savannah to find my car gone from the parking lot. Brett had sent his brother to get it. I stood in that parking lot in the August heat in the white sundress I'd worn to the appointment, because I'd wanted to feel less scared. And I looked at the empty space where my car had been, and I understood for the first time with my whole body, rather than just my head, exactly what kind of man I had married. I called Brett. Voicemail. I called Darlene, my best friend since 4th grade, who was at her shift at the diner and couldn't leave for 2 hours. I started walking. Not toward anywhere in particular. Toward the county road that connected to Highway 64, which connected to the interstate, which connected to Nashville, which was 60-some miles away and might as well have been a different country. I walked because standing still felt worse than moving, and because the alternative was sitting on the curb outside the medical building and waiting for something that wasn't coming. I made it 4 miles. The right sandal strap broke somewhere near the mile 3 mark, and I'd been walking on the edge of it since, feeling it go, knowing it was coming. When it finally gave out completely, I sat down on the gravel shoulder of Highway 64 and looked at the broken strap in my hand and the blacktop stretching out in both directions with nothing useful in sight. My phone was at 4%. The August heat came off the road in visible waves. I put my face in my hands. A truck passed, didn't slow. Another car going the other direction, didn't slow. Then, after a minute or two that felt longer, I heard tires on gravel. I didn't look up immediately. I was past the point of looking up for things that weren't going to help. But the sound stopped. Not the slowing down sound of someone checking if I was okay before driving on, but the stopped sound. Yeah, engine still running, door opening, footsteps on gravel. I looked up. The man crouching in front of me was not what I expected from a car that expensive on a highway like this one. He was maybe mid-30s, dark hair, the kind of face that had some weather in it. Not rough, just real, like someone who'd been through things and hadn't been destroyed by them. He had tattoos I could see at his collar and on both hands, the kind that weren't decorative, but told a story I didn't have the context to read. He was wearing a suit that cost more than 3 months of my receptionist salary, and he was crouching on the gravel shoulder of Highway 64 in the August heat, without any apparent concern for either the suit or the heat. He looked at my face, at the broken sandal, at the purse tipped over beside me. He didn't say, "Are you okay?" Yeah, which would have made me cry again. He didn't say, "Can I call someone?" which would have required me to explain that there wasn't really anyone to call. He didn't look at me the way people look at someone they feel sorry for. He looked at me the way people look at someone they're taking seriously. "What are you going to do next?" he said. My throat was tight. My face was probably a disaster. I had 4% battery and a broken sandal and an acceptance letter folded in my planner, and 60 miles between me and anything that resembled a plan. "I don't know yet," I said. He nodded, like that was a reasonable answer, like he'd heard worse. "You got somewhere to be tonight?" he said. "I'm working on it," I said. Something moved across his face. Not pity, closer to recognition, in the look of someone who understood the specific experience of working on it when working on it was all you had. He stood up, held out his hand, the tattooed one, the one with the expensive watch that caught the afternoon light. "Varro," he said. "My car's got air conditioning and a phone charger. I'm headed toward Nashville." He paused. "I'm not going to make you go anywhere, but the offer's there." I looked at his hand, at the highway stretching out in both directions, at the broken sandal on the gravel beside me. I thought about the acceptance letter in my planner. I thought about Brett's voicemail picking up. I thought about sitting on this shoulder until Darlene got off her shift in 2 hours and could figure out how to get to me, and what the 2 hours on this gravel in this heat would feel like, and whether I was the kind of woman who sat on a highway shoulder waiting for someone to rescue her. I wasn't. I took his hand. The air conditioning hit me like a wall. I'd been in the August heat for long enough that the cold felt almost wrong. Too much, too fast. The kind of relief that makes you realize how bad things were before you had it. I sat in the passenger seat of Varro's car and felt my skin adjust and stared at the dashboard, because looking at him directly felt like too much to manage right now. The car was a black sedan, not flashy, not the kind of thing that announced itself, but the interior was the kind of quiet expensive that didn't need to. Soft leather, no clutter, a phone mount on the dash that had a navigation app running. The charger was in the center console, exactly where he'd said it would be. So I plugged my phone in. The screen blinked to life, 3% climbing to 4. Cole pulled back onto the highway without asking me anything. Didn't ask where exactly in Nashville. Didn't ask what had happened on that shoulder. Just drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on his knee, the navigation voice filling the silence with the ordinary business of highway directions. I watched the Tennessee landscape move past the window, the long, flat stretches of Route 64 with their gas stations and fence lines, and the particular quality of summer light in this part of the state. The way it made everything look slightly more permanent than it was. Fields, tree lines, an occasional house set back from the road with a truck in the driveway and a dog on the porch. This was the world I was leaving. I wasn't sure yet how I felt about that. "You want to tell me where to drop you," Cole said. Not pressuring, just practical. I looked at my phone. 9% now. Enough to look up the address I needed. "Vanderbilt area," I said. "I need to find the enrollment office before it closes." A beat. "It's 4:15, he said. My stomach dropped. "What time do they close?" "Most university offices close at 5. He glanced at the navigation. "We're 42 minutes out in this traffic." I did the math. "Can you?" "Already adjusting the route," he said. He changed lanes. The navigation recalculated. I gripped the door handle without meaning to, and then made myself let go of it. "Thank you," I said. We drove. I made it to the enrollment office at 4:51. 9 minutes to spare. The woman at the desk, a Ms. Patricia Gaines, according to her nameplate, who had the particular energy of someone who had seen every kind of student emergency and had developed a compassionate but efficient system for handling them, looked at my face when I came through the door, and then looked at the rest of me, and then looked back at my face. "I'm here to confirm enrollment," I said. "Leanne Hadley, the nursing program." She found me in the system, asked 2 questions, printed a confirmation form. I signed it with a pen that had a rubber grip and a little Vanderbilt logo on the clip, and my hand shook slightly, which I chose to interpret as relief rather than anything else. "Welcome to the program," Ms. Gaines said. She said it the way people say things they mean, even when they've said them many times, like it still counted. My throat got tight. "Thank you," I said, again. It seemed to be the only thing I was capable of saying today, and I was making peace with that. I walked back out into the August heat. Cole was parked at the curb where I'd left him, which I hadn't been certain about. I'd told him he didn't need to wait, that I could figure out the rest, and he'd looked at me with the expression of a man who had heard that particular sentence before and had his own opinion about it. He was on a phone call when I came out. Low, brief, the kind of conversation that ended the moment he saw me coming. He hung up, looked at me. I held up the confirmation form. Something happened in his face. Small, real. "Good," he said. I got back in the car. Over the following hour, in the particular suspended time of Nashville rush hour traffic that turned a 20-minute drive into something considerably longer, I told Cole Varro more than I'd planned to tell anyone for a while. Not everything. Not the full architecture of 3 years with Brett. Not the 2 early losses, not the church ladies, and the compatible-sounding words that weren't kind at all. But enough. The nursing program. The 8 months of applying in the margins of evenings, while Brett watched television. The car in the parking lot that wasn't there when I came out. Cole listened the way people listen when they're not waiting for their turn to talk, just taking it in. Occasionally asking something short and factual. How long had the program been a plan? Did I have somewhere to stay? Had I called my family? My best friend's coming to get me, I said. Eventually. She's working until 6. I looked at my phone. 23% now. Enough to feel human again. Yash, she's got a couch. Darlene, he said. I looked at him. I mentioned her name. On the shoulder, he said. You tried to call her. I hadn't remembered that. Yeah, Darlene Yates. We've been friends since 4th grade. He nodded. What about you? I said. Because sitting in someone's car for an hour while you talked about yourself was a particular kind of one-sided that I wasn't comfortable with. Wrong exit, you said. He glanced at me. What? On the shoulder. You said you'd taken the wrong exit. I looked at him. From where? A pause. Meeting in Columbia. I was heading back to Nashville on the interstate and missed the ramp. He said it simply. Ended up on 64. Lucky for me, I said. Yeah. He said it in a way that meant he agreed, which was not the deflecting response I'd expected. The traffic moved. Nashville built up around us, the skyline coming into view, the particular compressed energy of a city after a long, flat drive through open country. Where am I dropping you? He said. I had Darlene's address in my phone. I gave it to him. He drove. At a red light on Charlotte Avenue, he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and came out with a business card. Plain. Heavy stock, just a name and a number. He held it out without looking at me. If you need anything while you're getting settled, he said. Finding housing. Anything that gets complicated. I took the card, looked at it. Varro, a Nashville number. Nothing else. No title, no company, no address. What do you do? I said. The light changed. He drove. I handle things, he said. I looked at the card, at his hands on the wheel, in the tattoos disappearing into his cuffs, the expensive watch catching the street light. I thought about the car that hadn't been flashy, but had been expensive in the quiet way. The phone call that ended the moment he saw me coming. The way he'd moved on that highway shoulder. Not rushed, not tentative, just certain. I handle things. I didn't ask what kind of things. Some part of me already had a sense of it. Darlene was waiting on the sidewalk outside her apartment building when Cole pulled up. She was in her diner uniform, the pale blue one with the white collar that she'd been wearing versions of since we were 22, with her hair still pinned back and an expression that told me she'd been standing there for at least 10 minutes working through everything she wanted to say before she said it. No, she looked at me climbing out of a black sedan driven by a man in an expensive suit with visible tattoos, and her face went through approximately 4 expressions in 3 seconds. Leanne May Hadley, she said. I'll explain everything, I said. She looked past me at Cole, who had gotten out to hand me my purse from the back seat because it was apparently the kind of man he was. Thank you, I said, for the 3rd time. He looked at me in the particular direct way he had. You've got the card, he said. I've got the card, I said. He got back in the car, pulled away from the curb. Darlene watched the car until it turned the corner. Then she turned to me. Who, she said carefully, was that? Varro, I said. He stopped on the highway. He stopped on the highway, she repeated. Yes. In that car? Yes. And drove you to Nashville? Yes. She looked at where the car had been, then at me, at the white dress that was dirty at the hem from walking, at my bare feet because I'd left the broken sandal on the highway shoulder, at my face, which I could tell from her expression still showed evidence of the last several hours. She opened her arms. I walked into them. She held on for a long time without saying anything, which was one of the things I loved most about Darlene Yates. She knew when the talking could wait. "Come inside," she said finally. "I made chicken and dumplings." Darlene's apartment was small and warm, and smelled like the food she'd made, and the particular combination of her shampoo and whatever candle she'd been burning. And it was the first place I'd been all day that felt safe. And we ate at her kitchen table. The chicken and dumplings, thick and warm, the kind of food that worked from the inside out. And I told her everything. Not the condensed version I'd given Cole in the car, the full version. 3 years of the house on Clover Ridge Road. The diagnosis. Brett's 4 days of silence, and then the compatibility speech. The car taken from the parking lot. The 4 miles on Highway 64. Darlene listened with the focused attention of someone who had been my best friend for 20-something years, and understood that I needed to get it out before I could figure out what to do with it. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "He took your car," she said. "His name was on the registration," I said. "He said it was technically his." Leanne. Her voice had the particular edge it got when she was keeping something stronger contained. "That man took your car on purpose, on a day he knew you had a medical appointment, to make sure you had nothing." "I know," I said. "He wanted you stranded." "I know, Darlene. He wanted you—" "I know." I looked at my chicken and dumplings. But I wasn't. She looked at me. "I got the card from the enrollment office," I said. "I confirmed the nursing program. I have 30 days before the semester starts to find housing." I looked up. "And I have a business card from a man named Varro who said to call if anything gets complicated." Darlene looked at the business card I'd set on the table between us. "Varro," she said slowly. "You know the name?" She was quiet for a moment, in a way that was different from her previous quiets. This one had something careful in it. "I've heard it," she said. "From customers at the diner. Nashville people, the ones who come through on the way somewhere." She picked up the card, looked at it. "He's not—" she paused. "Leanne, he's not a regular businessman." "I know," I said. "You know?" "I have a sense of it," I said. "He said he handles things." "That's one way to put it." She set the card back down. Her eyes moved to my face. "And you took the card anyway." I looked at the plain heavy stock. Varro, a Nashville number, nothing else. "He stopped," I said. "On a highway in August. He didn't ask what happened or offer me sympathy I didn't need. He asked what I was going to do next." I paused. "And then he got me to the enrollment office with 9 minutes to spare." Darlene looked at the card for a long moment. "You're going to call him," she said. Not a question. "Not tonight," I said. "Tonight, I'm going to eat your chicken and dumplings and figure out what housing near Vanderbilt costs." She pushed my bowl slightly toward me. "Eat," she said, "then we figure out the rest." I ate. Outside Darlene's window, Nashville was doing its evening thing. Music somewhere, traffic, the particular warm hum of a city that had enough going on to not notice one more woman starting over inside it. I thought about the acceptance letter, confirmed and official now, sitting in my confirmation email. I thought about the broken sandal on the shoulder of Highway 64. I thought about Varro's hand, extended on the gravel, certain and unhurried. "Oh, what are you going to do next?" I was starting to know. Finding housing near Vanderbilt on a tight timeline, with no credit history in Nashville, and a joint bank account that Brett had already moved to block my access to, was, it turned out, significantly harder than the acceptance letter had made it seem. I spent the first 3 days on Darlene's couch, doing the math in every direction and coming up with the same uncomfortable answer. The nursing program had a modest financial aid package. Enough to cover tuition with some left over. Not enough to cover Nashville rent at the prices I was finding. The closest affordable options were either too far from campus to manage without a car or required first, last, and security deposit that I didn't currently have in a single place I could access. Brett had moved fast on the joint account. I'd expected it, but hoping I was wrong had cost me 3 days. What I had, my own checking account with the savings I'd been quietly building for 8 months. Enough for 2 months of reasonable rent. Not enough for the deposit structure Nashville landlords wanted. My financial aid disbursement wouldn't hit until the semester started in 4 weeks. The gap was the problem. I sat on Darlene's couch on the third night with my laptop and my calculations, and the particular exhausted clarity of someone who has looked at a problem from every angle and found it genuinely difficult, and I picked up Varro's card. I looked at it for a long time. Then I set it face down on the cushion beside me. Not yet. I called my mother instead. My mother, Carol Hadley. He was a woman who had raised 3 children in Hardin County on a construction worker's income and a fierce practical intelligence that she applied to every problem like a tool. She didn't cry when things went wrong. She made lists. She'd been calling every day since I left the house on Clover Ridge Road, short calls, checking in without pushing, leaving room for me to come to her when I was ready. I told her about the housing gap. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "How much?" I told her the number. Another pause. "I can do half," she said. "Takes me to the end of my savings, but I can do half." "Mama, I'm not asking you to." "Leanne." Her voice was the kind of firm that came from love rather than impatience. "You're starting a nursing program at Vanderbilt. Your daddy would have been. He would have driven you himself." A pause. I can do half." My throat closed up. I stared at the ceiling of Darlene's living room. "Thank you, Mama," I managed. "Don't thank me," she said. "Just pass your classes." I would still need the other half, and I'd need it in the next 10 days. I looked at the card, face down on the cushion. I called Cole the following morning. Not impulsively. I'd thought about it through the night and made the decision the way I'd been making decisions for 8 months, quietly and thoroughly, turning it over until I knew what I thought about it. What I thought was this: a man who stops on a highway and asks what you're going to do next and drives you to an enrollment office and waits at the curb and hands you a card without any strings attached. That man either wants something specific or he's genuinely the kind of person who helps. Both options were worth understanding, and I wasn't going to understand either one by staring at a business card on a sofa cushion. He picked up on the second ring. "Leanne Hadley," he said. Like he'd known it was me before he answered. "You saved my number," I said. "I save everyone's number," he said. "Habit." "I need to ask you something," I said, "and I need you to tell me straight if it's not the kind of thing you can help with." "Ask," he said. I told him about the housing gap, factual, no emotion, the numbers and the timeline and what I had and what I needed. 30 seconds, maybe less. He was quiet for a moment. "What kind of place are you looking for?" he said. "Reasonable, safe, close enough to campus that I can manage without a car for the first semester." "Give me until tomorrow morning," he said. Cole." "I'm not giving you money," he said, which was not what I'd expected him to say. "I know someone who manages residential properties near Vanderbilt. Legitimate rentals. I'm going to ask if there's anything available that works on your timeline. A pause. No obligation on your end. If it doesn't work, or you don't like what he has, you walk away. I held the phone. Why? I said. A beat. Why what? Why are you helping me? The pause that followed was long enough that I thought he might not answer. I grew up with nothing, he said finally. And I had one moment where someone gave me a straight answer instead of a runaround when I needed it. Changed everything. He paused. You've got a plan. You've got the work ethic to have built it secretly for 8 months while your life was falling apart. You just need the gap closed. Another pause. I can close the gap. It's not complicated. I didn't know what to say to that. Tomorrow morning, he said. I'll call you. He called at 8:47. The apartment was on Natchez Trace, 12 minutes from the Vanderbilt campus on foot, on the second floor of a building managed by a man named Gerald Polk, who had the no-nonsense efficiency of someone who'd been doing this for 30 years and had seen every kind of tenant situation. Cole had spoken to him. Gerald had a unit opening in 6 days. Previous tenant had moved out early. Place needed a quick clean and a small repair. He was willing to work on the deposit structure given the circumstances and the reference. Cole drove me to see it on a Thursday afternoon. The apartment was small and clean and had a window in the main room that faced east, which meant morning light, which I hadn't known I needed until I stood in it. Gerald showed us around in 10 minutes. Practical, no sales pitch. Kitchen, bathroom, the bedroom that was modest, but had a closet with real shelving. The building had a laundry room on the ground floor and a parking space I didn't currently need. Utilities are separate, Gerald said. Lease is standard 12 months. Reference from Mr. Varro is sufficient for the background check given the situation. He looked at me directly. You a nursing student? Starting in 3 weeks, I said. He nodded. Had 2 nurses come out of this building in the last 5 years, he said. Good neighbors, quiet hours, which they appreciated. He handed me the lease paperwork. Read it. And if you have questions, call me. I took the paperwork. In the hallway, after Gerald had gone back to his office, I looked at Cole. You vouched for me, I said. Yes. You've known me for 4 days. 5, he said. And I've known Gerald for 12 years. He trusts my read on people. What's your read on me? I said. He looked at me in the direct way he had, not calculating, just honest. Someone who built a plan nobody knew about for 8 months while managing a life that was getting smaller, he said. That's not luck. That's character. My chest did something complicated. I'll pay you back, I said, whatever this cost you. Gerald adjusted the deposit structure, he said. It didn't cost me anything. The driving, I said. Did the time? Leanne. He said my name, the way people say it, when they want you to stop qualifying things. It's fine. I looked at the lease paperwork in my hands. I signed it the next morning. Moving into the apartment on Natchez Trace took one afternoon. I didn't have much. What fit in Darlene's car, which was what I'd managed to get out of the house on Clover Ridge Road before Brett's timeline ran out. Clothes, books, my nursing school application materials, the coffee maker I'd bought myself 2 years ago with birthday money, and that Brett had always called too expensive for what it was. A few kitchen things. The quilt my grandmother had made that had been on my side of the bed, and that I'd taken without asking, because it was mine in every way that mattered. Darlene helped me carry things up. She arranged the kitchen the way she arranged all kitchens, efficiently, with opinions about where things should go that were usually right. We put the quilt on the bed. I set the coffee maker on the counter. The morning light came through the east window exactly as it had when Gerald showed it to me. "It's good," Darlene said, standing in the middle of the main room. "It is," I said. "Cole Varro got you a good apartment," she said, in the tone of someone making a neutral observation about something they were not entirely neutral about. "Gerald Polk got me a good apartment," I said. Cole made the introduction. Darlene picked up a box and carried it to the kitchen. "He's called twice this week." "He called to ask if the apartment situation worked out," I said. And then to ask if I needed anything for move-in." "And did you need anything for move-in?" "He brought a lamp," I said. Darlene stopped in the kitchen doorway. "He brought a lamp. The main room didn't have overhead lighting," I said. "He noticed when we looked at it." She looked at the lamp, a simple one, warm-toned, sitting on the side table in the main room. She looked at me. "Leanne May Hadley," she said. "Don't," I said. "I'm not saying anything." "You're saying a lot without saying anything." "I'm saying a lamp is a specific thing to notice," she said, "and a specific thing to fix." I looked at the lamp. She was right. It was a specific thing to notice. I'd noticed him noticing it. The brief pause when we'd walked through the main room. The glance at the ceiling. The absence of a fixture. He hadn't said anything about it then. He just showed up on move-in day with a lamp that was exactly the right height and the right warmth for the space. I didn't know what to do with that yet. "Let's get the rest of the boxes," I said. Cole came by the building that evening. Not to the apartment. He called from the street, which I understood as a deliberate choice, the particular care of a man who was aware of lines and had decided to stay on the right side of them without being asked. I came down. He was leaning against his car in the early evening light, jacket off, sleeves rolled, the tattoos fully visible in a way they hadn't been in the car. He looked different without the full suit armor on. Still the same quality of presence, that certainty, in the sense of someone who'd been through things and organized himself around them, but more like a person and less like a category. He had a paper bag from a restaurant on Charlotte Avenue. "Figured you hadn't eaten," he said. "You figured right," I said. He handed me the bag. Didn't suggest coming in. Didn't make it into something it wasn't. "How's the apartment?" he said. "The light's good," I said. "In the main room." Something happened in his face. Contained, brief, good. We stood on the sidewalk outside the building in the warm Nashville evening and talked for 20 minutes about the nursing program, about the neighborhood, about a good grocery store within walking distance that he knew from when he'd lived nearby years ago. The easy kind of conversation that didn't require anything from either person, that just existed between two people who had somehow, in the space of a week, become something adjacent to comfortable with each other. When he left, I stood on the sidewalk and watched his car until I couldn't see it. Then I went upstairs. The lamp was on in the main room. The quilt was on the bed. The coffee maker was on the counter. It was mine, all of it. I sat down on the floor in the main room, not because there wasn't furniture, but because it felt like the right way to be in a space that was entirely yours for the first time. And I pressed my back against the wall and looked at the room in the warm lamplight and let myself feel the full size of what had happened in 1 week. A highway shoulder, a broken sandal, a question nobody had asked me in 3 years. What are you going to do next? I was doing it. I pressed my palms flat on the floor, felt the solid boards underneath. I was doing it. The nursing program started on a Monday. I was up at 5:30, not because I had to be. Orientation wasn't until 9. but because I'd been awake since 4 with the particular restless energy of someone whose life has changed shape and whose body hasn't caught up yet. I made coffee in the maker on the counter and sat at the small table by the east window and watched Nashville get light. The city woke up differently than Hardin County. Back home, the mornings were quiet first, birds, the occasional truck on the county road, the particular heavy rural silence before the world got moving. Nashville mornings had noise from the start, the low, continuous hum of a city that never fully stopped, traffic building on Charlotte Avenue, a delivery truck somewhere below, voices from the sidewalk. I didn't mind it. I got dressed in the clothes I'd laid out the night before, dark slacks, a white top, the comfortable flats that had survived the move, and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror for a moment, not checking anything specific, just looking, making sure the person looking back was still the one I recognized. She was. I picked up my bag, walked to campus. The nursing program cohort was 22 people. I registered this in the first 10 minutes of orientation, counted, because counting was something I did in new situations, a way of making the unfamiliar concrete. 22 people in a room that smelled like new carpet and the particular industrial cleaning product of institutional buildings. He seated in rows in a lecture hall with a screen at the front showing a welcome slide. The woman who sat beside me was named Rosa Tillman, early 30s, from Memphis, had been a patient care tech for 6 years before applying to the program. She had natural hair pulled back in a puff, and a pen she clicked 3 times before settling, and she looked at me when I sat down with the particular assessing friendliness of someone deciding whether the person next to them was going to be an ally or a complication. "First career change or first career?" she said. "Career change," I said. "I was a medical receptionist." "Good foundation," she said, like she was filing it. "Rosa. Leanne." She clicked her pen once more. "You from Nashville?" "Hardin County," I said. "Just moved here." She nodded, and something in her expression shifted. The slight softening of someone who understood what just moved here, after just meant in certain contexts, and who had decided not to make it a thing. "There's a study group forming," she said. "First year is brutal. You want in?" "Yes," I said, and that was that. The first weeks were the kind of hard that felt good. I want to be precise about that because it matters. I'd been doing a kind of hard for 3 years that felt like being ground down, like effort going into something that was consuming rather than building. This hard was different. This was the hard of learning things that were genuinely difficult, of coming home with my brain used up in the right way, of falling asleep over pathophysiology notes at 10 o'clock and waking up and doing it again. Our Rosa and I studied 3 nights a week at a coffee shop near campus, a place called Fern, that had long tables and good light and a policy of refilling your coffee without being asked that I appreciated deeply. We developed the shorthand of people who learn together under pressure, which sections to go back over, whose notes were cleaner, for which subjects, when to take the break, and when to push through. She was direct in the way of someone who had earned her directness and didn't apologize for it. She asked questions that got to the point. She had 0 patience for professors who made things complicated on purpose, and very high patience for the actual complexity of the material. I liked her immediately and trusted her gradually, which was the right order. She found out about Brett on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks in, when I got a text while we were studying and put my phone face down fast enough that she noticed. "You don't have to tell me," she said. "But you also don't have to hold it." I turned my phone over. The text was from Brett's number, not the first one since I'd left, but the first one I hadn't simply ignored. This one said, I heard you enrolled at Vanderbilt. I think we should talk about what you think you're doing. I showed it to Rosa. She read it. Her expression didn't change, which was its own kind of response. What you think you're doing, she said. Quiet, precise. He wrote that. Yes. You going to respond? No, I said. Good. She pushed the phone back to me. Block him after this session. You don't need whatever that is while you're trying to learn pharmacology. I blocked him after the session. It was easier than I expected. The phone didn't change. The world didn't change. I just removed one voice that had been telling me who I was and what I was doing. And the space it left was not sad. It was just space. Cole texted on a Thursday in the third week. How's the program going? I was between classes, sitting on a bench outside the nursing building with my sandwich and my notes, and I looked at the text and felt the particular warmth of something that had been sitting at a careful distance, finally moving slightly closer. Hard, I typed back. Good hard. Good hard is the right kind, he replied. I smiled at my phone. Rosa says I have the fastest assessment instincts in the cohort, I wrote. My receptionist background apparently pays off. Told you. Character. I put my phone away and ate my sandwich and tried not to think too much about the fact that a 3-word text from a man I'd known for less than a month had done more for my chest than most things in the last 3 years. I thought about it anyway. Just a little. He took me to dinner on a Friday evening in the 4th week. Not framed as a date. He'd said he wanted to hear about the program, and he knew a place near the gulch that was good and not loud, and would I want to go? I'd said yes, without taking the full beat to think about it, which was information about where I was that I filed and examined later. The restaurant was small and warm, the kind of Nashville place that had been there long enough to stop trying to impress anyone and had settled into being just genuinely good. Wood tables, low light, a menu that was Southern, but not performatively so. The kind of food that tasted like someone's grandmother had strong opinions about it. We ordered. He got the catfish. I got the chicken with the white gravy that I'd been thinking about since I read the menu, and would have ordered, even if it hadn't been the best thing on the table, which it was. I told him about the program, about pathophysiology and Rosa and the study group at Fern, and the particular satisfaction of learning something genuinely difficult. He listened the way he'd listened in the car on Highway 64, fully, without interruption, asking the right questions at the right moments. You seem different, he said at one point. Different from the highway, I said. Different from the parking lot at Vanderbilt, he said. Yeah, with 9 minutes to spare. I thought about that version of myself. The dirty hem, and the bare feet, and the 4% battery, and the shaking hand signing the confirmation form. I'm more like myself, I said. I think I'd been less like myself for a while, and didn't notice how much until I had room to be. He looked at me across the table. Brett, he said, not a question. Brett, I said, and the way I let the last 3 years go. I looked at my plate. I'm not blaming him for everything. I made choices too. I got smaller because it was easier than fighting the pressure to be smaller. I looked up. I'm done being smaller. Something moved through Cole's expression, not the brief contained thing from the enrollment office. Something more sustained. You were never small, he said. You built a nursing program application in secret for 8 months while your life was falling apart. That's not small. That was survival, I said. That's what I mean, he said. I looked at him across the warm table in the Nashville restaurant and felt something shift in my chest that I hadn't let shift in a long time. Careful, tentative, the specific feeling of a person who has been hurt enough to be cautious, but is starting to run out of reasons to stay cautious with this particular person. I stayed cautious anyway, for now. But I noticed it. Brett showed up in Nashville on a Saturday. I found out from Darlene, who called at 11 in the morning with a particular urgency she reserved for things that needed immediate handling. "He's at the diner," she said. "Asked if I knew where you were living." My hand tightened on the phone. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I didn't know," she said. "Which is technically true, because I don't know your exact address by heart." A pause. "But Leanne, he drove 4 hours." "I know. He looked," she paused. "He looked like a man who had decided something." My stomach tightened. I looked around my apartment. The east window, the quilt on the bed, the coffee maker, the lamp Cole had noticed. "Stay where you are," Darlene said. "Don't go anywhere alone today. And maybe—" She stopped. "Maybe what?" "Maybe call Cole Varro," she said, quietly, without her usual undertone about it, just a practical statement from a woman who had weighed the options and landed on what she thought was right. I stood in my apartment for a moment after she hung up. Brett had driven 4 hours. He'd taken my car, blocked my account. He'd given me a 2-week timeline to disappear from his life, and now he'd driven 4 hours to find me. I thought about what Darlene had said the night of the chicken and dumplings. He wanted you stranded. A man who wanted you stranded didn't drive 4 hours when you found your feet. I picked up my phone. I called Cole. Cole answered on the first ring. "Brett's in Nashville," I said. No preamble. "He showed up at my friend's diner this morning, asking where I live." A pause. Brief. Contained. "Are you at the apartment?" he said. "Yes." "Stay there. Lock the door." His voice was even, not alarmed, the specific calm of someone shifting into a gear they knew well. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. "Cole, I'm not asking you to—" "I know you're not asking," he said. "I'm telling you what I'm going to do. You can tell me to stop when I get there if you want." He hung up. I stood in the middle of my apartment with the phone in my hand and looked around at the space I'd been building for 4 weeks. The quilt, the lamp, the east window, the coffee maker on the counter. Everything I'd put in this room, I'd chosen deliberately, carried here myself, arranged with my own hands. Brett had never seen this room. He didn't know this address. He didn't know, really, who was living here. The version of Leanne Hadley who got up at 5:30 and walked to Vanderbilt and learned pathophysiology and blocked numbers that had no business in her new life. I locked the door. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my pharmacology notes because sitting still was worse than doing something. And I had an exam on Wednesday. Yeah, I read the same paragraph 4 times. Cole knocked at 18 minutes. I knew it was him. I'd watched the street from the window and seen his car pull up, seen him get out alone, move with that particular unhurried certainty toward the building door. I buzzed him in and had the apartment door open by the time he reached the second-floor landing. He looked at me first, quick, assessing, the visual check of someone confirming a person is okay, before moving to the next thing. "You're all right," he said. Not a question, a statement he was making to himself as much as to me. "I'm fine," I said. "He doesn't have this address." "I know." He came in, looked around the apartment briefly, not intrusively, the automatic spatial awareness of someone who always registered a room. His eyes landed on the pharmacology notes, open on the table. Something in his expression shifted slightly. "You were studying." "Trying to," I said. Same paragraph 4 times. He almost smiled, pulled out the chair across from my notes, and sat down, not taking over the space, just settling into it, making himself a presence, without making himself the center. "Tell me everything Darlene said," he told me. I told him. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, hands flat on the table, the tattooed hands I'd looked at on the highway shoulder, the ones that had reached down toward me like it cost him nothing. "Brett's not a physical threat," Cole said. "My read, from what you've described, is a man whose control mechanism stopped working and who drove 4 hours because he doesn't have another move." He looked at me steadily. "That doesn't make it comfortable." "Yeah, but it tells you what it is." "A man whose control mechanism stopped working," I said. "Yes." "Is that better or worse than a man with a plan?" "Better," he said. "A man with a plan is dangerous. A man who's lost his plan is just—" He paused. "Noise." I looked at my pharmacology notes, at the paragraph I'd read 4 times. "I blocked his number," I said. 3 weeks ago." "Good." Darlene said he looked like he'd decided something. I looked up. "What do men who've decided something look like?" Cole was quiet for a moment. "Like they're about to make a mistake they think is a solution," he said. I thought about that. "What do we do?" I said. "We don't do anything dramatic," he said. "You stay visible in your routine. Campus, the coffee shop, Darlene's diner if you go there. You don't vary your schedule to hide from him, because that gives him more power than he has." He paused. "I'm going to make a call. Make sure the people who need to know he's here know he's here." "What people?" I said. He looked at me in the direct way. "Cole," I said, "I need to know what that means." "It means I have people in this city who pay attention to things," he said carefully. "Brett Pruitt driving to Nashville and asking around for you is the kind of thing that gets noticed and communicated back. That's all." He paused. "Nobody's going to touch him. Nobody's going to threaten him. He's just going to find that Nashville is a city where certain things are visible." I held his gaze. "You trust me," he said. The question sat between us. It was a real question, not rhetorical, not pressuring. He was actually asking, like he understood that trust was something I was handing out carefully right now, and he wanted me to know he was aware of that. "Yes," I said, carefully. The corner of his mouth moved. "Carefully is fine," he said. He stayed for 2 hours, not doing anything specific. He made coffee, which I hadn't offered, but which he'd clearly decided was needed, and sat across from my pharmacology notes while I actually managed to read through the section I'd been stuck on. He answered 2 phone calls, both brief, both in the low voice I now recognized as his working register. He didn't tell me what was said. At some point, he looked over at my notes and said, "What's the section?" "Cardiovascular pharmacology," I said. "Beta blockers." "What's the mechanism?" I looked at him. "Do you actually want to know? Or are you distracting me?" "Both," he said. I explained beta blockers. He listened with the focused attention he brought to everything, asked 2 questions that were more perceptive than I'd expected, and then said, "So they slow everything down." "The heart, yes," I said. "They block the adrenaline response." He looked at his coffee cup. "Sometimes that's useful," he said, quietly, like it meant something past the pharmacology. I looked at him across the table. I thought about what Darlene had said in her kitchen over chicken and dumplings. The night I'd arrived in Nashville barefoot and tear-streaked. He's not a regular businessman. I thought about the calls he made in low voices, the people in the city who paid attention to things, the way he moved through spaces with the certainty of someone who understood where the power was in every room. And I thought about a man in an expensive suit kneeling on a gravel shoulder in August because he'd decided to stop. About a lamp the exact right height. About what are you going to do next when everyone else would have asked what happened. The two things existed at the same time. I was clear-eyed about that. "Cole," I said. He looked up. "What you do," I said. "I need to understand it better than I do." He was quiet for a moment, set his coffee cup down. "What do you want to know?" he said. "The real version," I said, "not the managed version." He looked at me for a long moment, the particular look of someone deciding how much of something to hand over. "I run operations in Nashville," he said carefully. "Businesses, some of which are straightforward and some of which are not. I have relationships with people across the city, in government, in law enforcement, in finance, in neighborhoods that don't have much access to any of those things. I use those relationships to maintain a balance." He paused. "I don't hurt people who don't choose to come into my world. I don't involve civilians in what I do." Another pause. "You are a civilian. I want you to know I'm clear about that." "But you stopped on the highway," I said. "Yes." "That wasn't about your world." "No," he said. "That was about a woman on a gravel shoulder who needed someone to ask the right question." "Why?" I said. Again. The same question I'd asked in the car. He looked at the table for a moment. "My mother," he said. "She left my father when I was 9. We had nothing. And she sat on the front steps of a motel in Clarksville with me and my sister, and our 2 bags, and a man from the next unit over asked if we needed help." He looked up. "That man drove us to my grandmother's house in Nashville. 3 hours. He didn't know us. He just stopped." He paused. I have never forgotten that. The apartment was very quiet. Outside the east window, Nashville was doing its Saturday afternoon thing. Traffic, music somewhere, the ordinary sound of a city that didn't know what was happening in this small room. "Clarksville," I said. "Yes." "That's where my mother lives," I said. He looked at me. "Small world," I said quietly. "Small world," he said. Brett left Nashville that evening. I know this because Cole's phone buzzed at 6:47 with a text he glanced at, and then sat face down on the table. Just a minute later, he said, "He's on the interstate, heading back toward Hardin County." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "That's it," I said. "He asked around, couldn't find your address, sat in his truck outside a diner for 3 hours, and drove home," Cole said. "That's what it was." "Noise," I said. "Noise," he said. I looked at the table. At my pharmacology notes, now fully annotated, 2 hours of actual studying done in the strange calm of Cole Varro making coffee in my kitchen. "Thank you," I said, for what felt like the 100th time since Highway 64. "You don't have to keep thanking me," he said. "I know," I said. "I do it anyway." He looked at me. I looked at him. The apartment held us both in the warm lamplight. The lamp he'd noticed, on the one that was exactly right. And the thing that had been sitting at a careful distance for 4 weeks moved a little closer, and I let it, and he could see that I was letting it. Neither of us said anything about it. Not yet. But the not yet was different now from what it had been. That night, after Cole left, I called my mother. Not because anything dramatic had happened. Brett had driven to Nashville and driven home, and that was the full extent of it. But I wanted to hear her voice. I wanted the particular anchor of it, the way she said my name in the specific tone that meant she saw me clearly. "Mama," I said when she answered. "Hey, baby." A pause. "You okay?" "I'm okay," I said. "I'm better than okay." "You sound like it." A beat. "Classes." "Hard," I said. "I'm good hard." She made the sound she made when she was pleased, but keeping it measured. "Your daddy would be insufferable right now," she said. "Just so you know. He would have told everyone in Hardin County." My throat got tight. "I know," I said. "Tell me about the program," she said. "I've got time." I told her about the program, about Rosa and the study group, and the pharmacology section that had finally made sense, about the apartment with the east window and the morning light, about Nashville, which was louder than Hardin County, but which had turned out to be exactly the right kind of loud for this particular chapter. I didn't tell her about Cole. Not yet. Some things needed more time before they could be named out loud. But I thought about him while I talked. About the lamp. About the catfish at dinner. About beta blockers and the adrenaline response and what he'd said quietly to his coffee cup. Sometimes that's useful. I thought about a man who stopped on a highway because someone had once stopped for his mother. I thought about the specific weight of being seen by someone who wasn't looking for anything back. And I thought about the not yet, which was different now, which felt, for the first time in a long time, like something worth moving toward. The semester found its rhythm. That's the best way I can describe what happened over the following weeks. Not a dramatic shift. Not a single moment where everything clarified, but the gradual settling of a life that was being built correctly for the first time. The kind of rhythm that comes when you're doing work that's genuinely yours, in a place you chose, surrounded by people you selected rather than inherited. Monday and Wednesday mornings were clinical observation, the hospital floors where the program sent us to watch and learn before we were trusted to do. I loved these with a specific intensity that surprised me at first, and then didn't. The nurses I watched move through those halls with a competence that was also a kind of care. The way they talked to patients, the way they registered information and acted on it without drama, the particular combination of technical precision and human presence that made the work what it was. I wanted that. I wanted it with the clarity of someone who had spent 3 years in a life that didn't fit, and now understood with my whole body what fitting felt like. Rosa called it the click. "When it clicks," she said one morning over coffee at Fern, you stop wondering if you made the right choice and start just doing the work." "When did yours click?" I asked. 3 years ago," she said. "Night shift in the ICU in Memphis. Patient coded at 2 in the morning. I watched the team work and I thought, that's what I want to be." She clicked her pen. "Took me another 6 months to actually apply. But the click was that night." "Mine was before I even applied," I said. "I think I'd been waiting for permission." Rosa looked at me over her coffee. "From who?" I thought about that. "From myself," I said finally. I kept waiting for some version of myself to tell the current version it was allowed. And now? "Now I just go to class," I said. She smiled. "The real one? The one she didn't give out easily." "That's the click," she said. "See, Cole and I had dinner again on a Friday 3 weeks after the Brett situation. And the Friday after that. And the one after that. I want to be honest about what those Fridays were and weren't. They weren't dates in the declared way. We didn't call them that, didn't frame them that way, moved through them with the particular care of two people who understood that what was building between them needed room, rather than labels. We ate at the same small place, near the Gulch mostly, occasionally somewhere new. Always the kind of restaurant that was good without trying to perform goodness. We talked about everything. He told me about growing up in Nashville after his mother brought them from Clarksville, the grandmother's house in the Bordeaux neighborhood, small and crowded and full of more love than space. The way he'd learned the city from the ground up, the parts of it that didn't show up in the tourist version. The way the work he did now had started as survival and become something he'd built deliberately over 15 years, with rules He decided on himself about what he would and wouldn't do. "There are lines," he said one Friday. "I decided them early, and I don't move them." "What are the lines?" I said. "People who don't choose this world don't get pulled into it," he said. "That's the main one." He looked at his food. "My mother didn't choose it. My sister didn't choose it. People I care about don't get used as leverage or exposure points." He looked up. "That's non-negotiable." "That sounds like something you learned the hard way," I said. "Yes," he said simply. I looked at him across the table. Oh, at the face that had weather in it, but hadn't been destroyed by the weather. At the hands that had reached down to me on a highway shoulder. At the man who had driven 4 hours from Clarksville to Nashville once, years ago, sitting in a car with his mother and sister and 2 bags, because someone had decided to stop. "Cole," I said. He looked at me. "I need to tell you something," I said, "and I need you to hear it as information, not as a thing that requires a response right now." He set his fork down, gave me his full attention. "I spent 3 years making myself smaller," I said, "and the last few months getting larger again, getting back to the size I actually am." I looked at the table, then back at him. "I'm not done with that process. I'm still in the middle of it." "I know," he said. "And I don't know what I have room for right now, in terms of—" I paused. "In terms of more than what this is." "I know that too," he said. No deflection, no reassurance that tried to move me faster than I was moving. Just acknowledgement. "I'm not saying no to anything," I said. "I'm saying I need to keep doing what I'm doing and see where things are when I'm more settled." "Leanne," he said. His voice was quiet. "I stopped on a highway because someone needed help. Everything after that has been because I wanted it to be." He picked his fork back up. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not keeping score. When you know what you want, you'll tell me." I looked at him. "That's it," I said. "That's it," he said. I picked up my fork. We finished dinner. Outside the window, the Nashville moved through its Friday night, lights and music and the particular energy of a city that liked itself on weekends. I watched it for a moment over my water glass and felt the full strange beauty of being exactly where I was, in a small restaurant near the Gulch, sitting across from a complicated man who had asked the right question on a highway and had not asked for anything back since. The semester's first set of exams landed in early November. I passed all 3, not barely. Well, Rosa texted me a string of celebration emojis that went on for longer than was strictly necessary, and I laughed alone in my apartment at 11 at night, and then cried a little. The good kind. The kind that was just relief finding its way out. I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. She always did now, ever since I'd moved. Like she'd adjusted her phone habits to be available when I called. "I passed," I said. The sound she made was not a word. It was better than a word. It was the sound of a woman who had watched her daughter build something real and was receiving confirmation that it was holding. "Tell me the scores," she said. I told her the scores. "Your daddy," she said, and then stopped. "I know, Mama," I said. We stayed on the phone for a while after that, not saying much, just existing in the same call the way you can, with people who have known you long enough to be comfortable in the quiet. I told Cole about the exams the next Friday. He listened to the scores with the same attention he brought to everything, and when I finished, he said, "I knew you would." "You couldn't have known," I said. "I knew on the highway," he said. "The 8 months of secret applications while your life was falling apart. Those aren't exam scores. Those are character." I looked at him across the table. The thing that had been moving closer for months was very close now. I felt it in the specific way you feel things you've been careful about. A warmth that was no longer tentative. A steadiness that had replaced the careful distance. The particular feeling of a door that you've been standing at the threshold of for a long time and are finally ready to walk through. "Cole," I said. He looked at me. "I'm settled enough," I said. He was very still for a moment, reading what I meant. Then, slowly, like he was making sure he understood correctly. "Yeah? Yeah," I said. What happened in his face in that moment was not the contained brief thing I'd been watching for months. It was something larger than that. Something he let through without managing it. The expression of a man who had been patient, not because patience was easy, but because he understood that some things were worth the wait. He reached across the table. His hand, the tattooed one with the good watch, turned palm up between the bread basket and the water glasses. An offering, not a demand. The same gesture as the highway. "Here, if you want it, no pressure either way." I put my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm, steady, certain in the way he was certain about everything without being forceful about it. We sat like that for a moment, the small restaurant doing its Friday thing around us. Nashville outside the window. The ordinary, extraordinary fact of two people who had found each other on a highway in August and had taken the long, careful road to this table. "I want to meet your mother," he said. I laughed. Surprised, real, the laugh that came from somewhere genuinely happy. "That's the first thing you say," I said. "She lives in Clarksville," he said. "My grandmother's house was 2 streets over from where you grew up. She made the best biscuits in the county, I'd bet." I stared at him. "How do you know about the biscuits?" "I don't," he said, "but it seems like the kind of thing that runs in families." I looked at our hands on the table, at the lamplight, not the one from my apartment, but the same quality of warmth. At the man across from me who had knelt on a gravel shoulder and asked what I was going to do next, and had been, and in every way that mattered, the right kind of person ever since. "She'll like you," I said. "She likes people who show up." "I show up," he said. "I know," I said. "That's the whole thing, Cole. That's the entire thing." The following spring, Leanne Hadley passed her second semester clinicals with the highest assessment scores in her cohort. Rosa framed the results sheet as a joke. Leanne hung it in the east window, where the morning light hit it first. Her mother Carol came to Nashville for the weekend. Met Cole Varro over dinner at the small place near the gulch, where Carol ate the catfish and told him his grandmother's neighborhood had the best church choir in Nashville, and asked him 3 direct questions that he answered without flinching. Driving home Sunday, Carol called Leanne from the interstate. "He stops," Carol said. Simply. "Yeah," Leanne said, "he does." "That's enough," her mother said. "That's the whole thing." Leanne smiled at the road ahead. "I know, Mama," she said. "I know.